Hello, we are live. This is Max Rempel, and you can join me by going to the site hucolo.org, and there is a link to Zoom, and you can. Hello, we are live. This is Max Rempel, and you can join me here in that conversation. And today I will be speaking about the quantum nature of consciousness, or in a more long way to say, I will be speaking about quantum mechanics of consciousness and everything else which is related to that. And to start, I will start by sharing my screen and playing a few minutes of a video, which is my presentation presented remotely in India on a consciousness conference there. And meanwhile, I will post that video link to my other channel so that people can see. So let me share my screen now. Just a sec. Okay, that goes here, that goes there. Share screen, share sound, optimize for video. Okay, share. Another necessary insight for researchers is the primacy of consciousness. It looks like there is a fundamental natural law that prevents experimentally proving the primacy of consciousness to society. We, as scientists, have to treat this as an unprovable hypothesis. Many arrive at the realization of this primacy by research and personal experiences. The materialistic model flips into a model of universal consciousness experiencing itself. The image of the snake eating its tail can be used to illustrate this principle. Our consciousness is a fractal fragment of the universal consciousness, and so is our body and all universe. There is nothing outside of universal consciousness. Space-time is a special case of universal consciousness, and in our classical material world, we are its fractal fragments experiencing life. DNA makes a single coherent integrated system between our body and our mind, and it connects the higher mind and our physical mind. The coherence in DNA structure is the key to telepathy. Since DNA participates in our thinking, our culture and experience imprints on DNA, and our memories are actually stored in the DNA structure. Many factors of modern life disrupt the coherence in DNA. Discordance in our lifestyle is the main factor that inhibits telepathy. Discordance in our lifestyle is the main factor that inhibits telepathy. This specifically includes chemicals, discordant electromagnetic waves, discordant cultural messages, fear and disagreements in the society, and even genetic discordance. One huge factor is that we are programmed for survival, and much of our DNA program is keyed to survival. Non-speaking autistic telepaths are often shielded from cultural fears, not heavily influenced by social programming, and are supported by caregivers who help maintain their well-being. The same relates to Aboriginal telepaths, who are separated from civilization, live in nature, harmonious with nature. There is a direct connection between the culture, ego, and the structure of DNA. Our culture requires extreme separation and trains extreme separation between the individual and society, and between the individual and nature. It requires precision, quick reaction, and decision-making. These are all properties of the physical mind, and they all require certainty. So the demand for certainty is imprinted in our DNA. Yet telepathy and other psychic gifts require uncertainty and an intuitive state of mind, which corresponds to the delocalized state of electrons and protons in DNA and surrounding water. Meditation techniques introduce altered states where the brain oscillates between the conscious state and a dream state. This shifts the balance from localization to delocalization in the positions of electrons and protons in DNA. The delocalization in DNA unites the electrons in electron clouds and protons in proton wires. Therefore, telepathy is an oscillation process between uncertainty and certainty. To send a message, the person has to be specific in defining the message. but then go into an altered state, send the message, and the other person has to go into an altered state and receive the message. This duality can be subtle, but both states are necessary. Certainty is needed for sending and receiving, and also the uncertainty is needed for delocalization and remote transmission. This is nicely illustrated by dolphins who have a split brain, and half of the brain sleeps while the other half of the brain is awake. So they exist simultaneously in the sleep and wake states. And this is a perfect state for a telepath as well. Autistic telepaths likely possess distinctive genetic sequences that enhance their telepathic abilities. This telepathic ability is likely the next step in human evolution. This evolutionary step was predicted by Blavatsky 137 years ago. The research of alien hybridization program is best documented by John Mack. Although there are many personal accounts, the genetic evidence is missing. I suggested that it would be possible using genetic analysis to observe modern genetic insertions by aliens in human families. I looked at recent genetic insertions in families containing 2 parents and at least 1 child. In classical genetics, in classical Mendelian inheritance, the child inherits exactly 50% of their DNA from each parent with no additional insertions. I analyzed 3 families from public databases and discovered in 2 families large insertions, which I called non-parental inheritance. These insertions weren't present in either of the parents. The insertions weren't single markers, but several markers in a row, making it very unlikely to be an artifact of genotyping. I conclude that this is likely a trace of genetic manipulation by the aliens. This would be the recent insertion of DNA into the child, and this DNA is not present in either parent. I would like to conclude with an ecological message about our collective biofield. Our DNA is integral to the biofield of the whole planet biosphere, and we are connected in one vibrational network. Modifications of plant and animal DNA are already going on fully, and modifications of human DNA are technically possible, and they are not prohibited in all countries. Most likely the genetic modification of humans is also happening currently. You can join me by and this happens without understanding all the vibrational consequences. Modifications of plant vibrational and literacy and ecology are super important, because it is important to protect our genome and keep our DNA coherent. Arbitrary modification of the DNA sequence without understanding the vibrational consequences could have very strong detrimental effects on the vibrational health of the whole civilization. So, discovery, understanding, and collective awareness of the collective vibrational DNA ecology are needed. In conclusion, I would like to thank my collaborators Richard Alan Miller, Ivan Savelyev, Michael Rempel, Oksana Poleskaya, and others. I thank Stanley Krippner, Rupert Sheldrake, and Dean Redin for support and comments. All my publications are available as full text on dnaresonance.org/p, and I thank the organizers for the invitation to speak and everyone for listening.
Please introduce Stuart Hameroff, professor at the University of Arizona, active in the Center for Consciousness Studies.
Okay, I'm back. I posted the link everywhere, and for those who join me now, you can join me at hucolo.org. There is a link to Zoom. Join me now. So, what is happening? I started a long time ago, 26 years ago, and my main focus was on resonance of DNA in DNA. I guess I was interested in all paranormal, all mystical, even back then, but gradually the DNA resonance brought me closer to the idea of the nature of consciousness. One of the key events was when I met a Reiki teacher, Barbara Carlton, in Rochester. That was not the first time I met a healer, but this teacher was able to translate to my language and actually was welcoming questions and First, I became a patient, and then I became a teacher of Reiki. That was around 2002, 2000, no, it was 2006. Before that, I met with other Reiki healers and other natural practitioners, natural healing practitioners, naturopaths. And then in 2009, at my birthday, I read the book, which was The Field by Lynn McTaggart. The Field by Lynn McTaggart. And that's where the idea of the field and idea of, I guess, consciousness studies merged very nicely with the idea of DNA resonance. And when I closed that book, I started I asked the question, what about the extraterrestrials, the aliens? And I started researching that topic, and I haven't left the topic since. So, and now it is many years later, the many events happened, but one of the major breakthroughs happened was the telepathy tapes. It's like event, the more like development. It is a development, a process of building a community around Lynn McTaggart and her telepathy tapes. So there is a team which makes the movie, makes the podcast, and I just wonder what's more influential, podcast or the movie. The movie is still coming, but podcast is already here, and the genie is out of the box. Essentially, what is now becoming, let me close the window. I don't know if you hear. So the idea is that the telepathy is provable, and it is already have been demonstrated, proven in normal people, which are called neurotypical. And telepathy is sending and reading minds, sending messages, messages from one mind to another between two people, and also receiving the messages. So one is sender, one is receiver, and they often have a conversation. But even one way is already a telepathy. Telepathy. Now, that was in normal people. Telepathy is weak, and it's possible to statistically prove it exists, but it's really strong and hard to catch on camera. What appeared is what came up with Kai Dickens and Dr. Powell is that Diane Hennessy Powell, that autistic people called neurodivergent, autistic, abnormal, are talented telepaths, many of them. Some of them don't know well of that, but some of them are well aware of that, and some are really good. They also are talented psychics, and they see spirits and they communicate with spirits. So being non-speaking autist, or being an autist which is falls out of the society and needs to be taken care of, liberates a person from civilized upbringing, and that unleashes, enables telepathy and telepathic and psychic abilities. So they are capable of reading minds, they're capable of sending thoughts, they're capable of speaking to the spirits, but they are not fitting into the society. So that's one of the biggest clues that either they are genetically modified, which I think it is in most cases true, or that we are capable of telepathy and psychic abilities, but the civilized upbringing blocks it. And my question is, what is the biology of that? And where does DNA fit in that paradox? So I would say both are true. First, they are genetically modified by the aliens. They are more advanced hybrids, and that makes them less compatible with civilized life. On the other hand, even neurotypical normal humans are also capable, maybe not as much, but we are programmed to forget that. So basically, children in young age, very many children, many have psychic abilities. They see spirits. I saw that on children, and then gradual school and upbringing blocks that. So that gives us a bridge to quantum physics. So essentially what I'm saying is that blockage of telepathy is happening through the demand for certainty. So we are pressured by time. We're being trained to do things on time and to hurry up. That's one of the strongest influences of the civilization, which makes sense in many ways, because if you traveled, for example, with several people, you have to synchronize. If you don't synchronize, things fall apart, at least on that planet. You miss the airplane, things happen. Miss the bus, you don't even meet. So without having telepathy, without being guided, you have to rely on synchronization. In the telepathic civilizations, in the telepathic societies, people are telepathically coordinating. But if you do neither use telepathy or you don't use synchronization by time, you are screwed. And some people are that they're just screwed. But that demand for certainty also is one of the demands for deception, because certainty in many cases is deception. The reality is much more complex to fit it into language and to fit it into the words. That's one of the reasons for the lies. Like, here's an example. Am I pretty? You're pretty 70%. You can't really say you're not. You're like, yeah, you're better than that, but you're worse than that. So you're 70th percentile, but you don't say that. You say, of course you are, or no way. So that demand for certainty is stars bending the truth. But even more than that, the civilized behavior requires a lot of lies, a lot of deception, and in most cases you can't really say what you think, and you can't really say all the truth, because people will take advantage of you. You can say your passwords, you have to keep your secrets, you have to keep your boundaries, possessions, watch your wallet, and so on. It's it is possible, if you're a saint and you always speak truth, then you have to someone guard you. I guess it's possible to split into two personalities. One is always truthful, and another one is diplomatic and civilized and takes care of all the routine. But it's possible. But if you start practicing speaking truth, you won't go far. You will have then to omit the truth, and you can be deceptive by silence. Mahatma Gandhi was silent one day of the week. and I forgot the other name. Oh, Dada, Dada, the teacher of Krishna Das, was always silent. Maybe not him, I'm not sure. Some other teacher of Krishna Das was always silent, or Ram Das, yeah, one of those. So they would write on the white blackboard with a chalk. Their Ram Das's teacher would write on the board, and Mahatma Gandhi would write on paper. But still, even the writing would, you would have to be still diplomatic, especially with big figures like Mahatma Gandhi. They had to be diplomatic. So that demand for certainty is collapse of the wave function in the quantum physics. You collapse very uncertain, very probabilistic situation into certainty. And that has to happen. Basically, you have to either eat or not eat. You have to either drink or not drink. You have to sleep or not sleep. So there is life that pushes us into decisions all the time. And to survive, you have to make decisions all the time. So that is nature of thinking. You have to exercise your free will and decide constantly to move forward. Now, if you stop doing that, I don't know how long would you survive. You can build this mental exercise. If you don't decide, I guess your body will do something because it has its own survival instincts. So it will by itself subconsciously, unconsciously walk to the fridge and grab something. And you can watch your body eat. So you're not in full control of your body. Sometimes you are. And in civilized world, you are supposed to be in control of your body. But for non-speaking autists, they are not in control of their bodies. Sometimes they are, but often they are not. So the bodies are independent, they do whatever, and then once in a while they come in and use their bodies to do things and socialize. So free will is, you have to define free will. And free will is making choices under time pressure in the absence of full understanding of situation. If you make choices in unlimited time or without time pressure and knowing the situation, it's not free will, it's just logical, clear conclusion where you don't even have to choose. Say if you, what's a good example? If you want to join, if you want to check your bank account, you know you have to enter the password. Or if you use a debit card, you have to type in your PIN. And it's not a free choice. It's basically, it's given. You have to do it. So you just follow whatever you do. If you are thirsty, you have to drink. It's not a choice. You basically choose only what to drink, but you have to drink something. And some things happen by themselves. You breathe without even thinking about that. You can influence breathing, but it happens by itself. So it's not a free choice. You cannot choose to breathe or not to breathe, I guess. Yeah, so these are just examples. So to understand better this free choice, does free choice makes us conscious? So can you model free choice somehow? So the simplest example of free choice I come up with is a toy called bump and go car. So if you know, the boys, okay, traditionally brought up boys know these cars which go straight, they bump into the wall or some furniture, then they sort of wiggle around, turn around, and keep going. And that was available even before electronics. It was just pure mechanical. There was electrical motor that pushes it, and in the old days it was even spring charged car without any logic. It would just go back, and go sideways. And that was because mechanically, when it stopped, there was some sort of mechanical sensor which felt that it was stopped, so it started spinning the wheels randomly. And eventually the wheels would turn around and it would go backward, and then they will keep turning around, it would go somewhere else. So, and it was unpredictable essentially. So that's example of time pressure. It is pushed forward, an obstacle, and then random choice without actually knowing where you're going. So that's free will. Okay. So that is a clue to consciousness. So we are designed to be under time pressure or time pull. So the time pulls us forward, or there is some force that pulls us forward in time. And we have to make choices. That's the main part of the game. The next big conclusion is, the next big question is, how do we go around about psychic abilities? Again, telepathy, psychic abilities, clairvoyance, and all other clairs where you can see, think, hear, know things from the distance or things from the future. Premonitions, the sense whether that something will happen, or the dreams that will then manifest, or some predictions that sometimes go many years in the future. Like one of the examples was very long prediction. Yogananda, I guess I will start from the end. One of his students or followers, one of his followers here in California, had an experience, I would say. So when Yogananda came from India, he brought lots of presents. That's like Indian tradition to bring presents, and he gave a silver cup to his follower. And then the follower remembered an event that happened long time before that, many years. When he was a child, he was drowning, and some face appeared to him spiritually, and then he was magically saved. And in the same face, he met that person in far away, I think in London, on the street, and this person said, oh, actually, no, that was two different people. Yeah, and that person said that, I'm not your guru. Yeah, I'm not your guru, but when you will know your guru when he gives you a silver cup. And that will happen like many years, like 50 or 60 years before that happened. And then 60 years after, Yogananda gives him a silver cup, and that's a symbol of that Yogananda is his guru. Okay, I will make a next break for a few minutes, and then we'll continue. Just a sec. I will start from the beginning here. Share. Share screen. Okay, where is it? Share. Hello, we are live. This is Max Rempel, and you can join me by going to the just a sec. How do I turn on the sound? Without the use of physical means such as sound. Hi, this is Max Rempel. I will talk about DNA resonance and telepathy. Telepathy is a communication between individuals that goes directly from mind to mind, without the use of physical means such as sound, gestures, phone, internet, and so on. Typically, telepathy is consensual. Two individuals consent to talking to each other telepathically. Telepathy is one of many psychic phenomena studied by parapsychology, which is part of metaphysics. Related phenomena are mind reading, remote viewing, seeing the future, telekinesis, mediumship, channeling, psychic healing, and others. The reason I'm focusing on telepathy is that it is easy to measure, it was recently popularized, and it has a great potential to heal society. How can telepathy heal society? First, mind reading prevents deception, and telepathy is easier for kind people. Scientific research on telepathy dates back over 100 years. Carl Jung researched telepathy, especially in dreams. He said in 1933 letter, "The existence of telepathy in time and space is still denied only by positive ignoramuses." Here are a few starting points on telepathy reading. Powell documented exceptional telepathic abilities in non-speaking autistic individuals. Powell, Radin, and Sheldrake tested telepathy through controlled experiments. Great evidence comes from dream telepathy experiments by Ullman and Krippner in the 70s. Sleeping subjects received telepathic messages sent by remote awake participants. Strong evidence also comes from lab studies of average people. Large groups were tested under controlled conditions in many studies. These show modest effects but high statistical significance, and this provides compelling proof of telepathy. Some individuals possess exceptional telepathic abilities. They can transmit and receive information with high precision. This research exists but hasn't yet entered mainstream scientific journals. For diligent investigators, the telepathy tapes provides initial evidence. Further investigation reveals talented telepaths who demonstrate remarkable accuracy. The Telepathy Tapes is an audio podcast that has been airing since September 2024. It explains, in accessible forms, the research on telepathy and the prevalence of high-level, high-precision telepathy among autistic individuals. I've researched telepathy since 2009 and had personal controlled observations that convinced me of its reality. So I believe the telepathy research of Jung, Radin, Sheldrake, and Powell is correct. Thanks to public awareness awakened by Kai Dickens, I hope that stronger evidence will emerge soon. Therefore, I will focus on potential mechanisms, assuming remote telepathy is real. Non-speaking autistic individuals communicate remotely with high precision through telepathy. This telepathy works across any distance with accuracy and ease. Telepathic autists form a telepathic network. From the prevalence of non-speaking autism, I estimate approximately 1 million individuals worldwide possess these telepathic abilities. These telepaths sometimes teach telepathy to normal neurotypical parents and teachers. One of the most fascinating observations is that some teachers now conduct lessons for autists in silence. Telepathy and remote viewing tests were conducted in Faraday cages, underground, and even in submarines, underwater, where classical fields can't penetrate. Yet the information passes through all barriers. So we are not dealing with electromagnetic waves of sound. These are subtle, non-local phenomena. There are two types of telepathy, low and high efficiency. Low efficiency telepathy can be detected in normal, neurotypical people. Normal people are called neurotypical to reduce judgment of abnormal people who are called neurodivergent. Telepathy was measured in normal people in many controlled studies, and normal people can barely communicate telepathically. But considering the large number of tests, subjects, and studies, the statistical evidence for telepathy is highly significant. Now I will bring DNA resonance into the picture. DNA is not acting by itself in resonance. And proteins, which together form chromatin, the substance of chromosomes, made up of histones. So negatively charged DNA, positively charged histones, and water are the main players. This chromatin structure is... Okay, I'm back. Let's continue. So the next step is pretty big. It requires some logic, I guess, either logic or experience. So personal experience or logic or research, and to believe that consciousness is primary and material world is secondary. It's a huge step for materialists, and there is tons of materialists around. And even those who are into, I would say, religion, especially into Christianity, they're still very materialistic. Actually, in all cultures nowadays, civilization brings materialism somehow. It dominates even religious cultures. Say in India, now people are in Hinduism and still believe in materialism at the same time. So for them, spirituality, God, miracles are somewhere else, and materialism is here. And the connection is very, I would say for them, is very thin, unreliable. So we are here materialists, and miracles happen elsewhere, somewhere in the literature, somewhere in the movies, maybe a little bit of influence on our lives, but a lot of people are, yes, non-superstitious, don't believe in mystical things, and even more, I think, by their design, by their spiritual design, and by their astrology, and by karma, they are very grounded into the element of earth, so they're very earthly. So there is a lot of earthly people, and there are a lot of ethereal people who are just like to be with the mainstream, and mainstream is materialistic. So that's, two things together. Lots of people who are by design in the earth element, and lots of people who are culturally want to be in mainstream, they end up materialistic. So the idea of the primacy of consciousness is pretty much in all religions, and pretty much in all science, except quantum physics. When you seriously take quantum physics, you understand that that material is an illusion. That material world is pretty much it is called in physics, it's called special case. If you adjust the parameters in such a way that you get into our size and our temperature, size, temperature, and gravity, then things seem to be hard to touch. They're material. But if you just start looking closer at, zoom into microscopic scales, nanometer scales, you realize everything is only fields, like physical fields, electromagnetic and other fields, gravitational, electromagnetic, other fields. So it is it's not actually that's solid. The fields have structures, but when you zoom in, you realize there is nothing solid inside. Solid is just a state of the field. And experiments show, like one of the prettiest experiments is that even material things have properties of the wave, electromagnetic wave, and you can shoot tiny crystals through the double slit barrier wall with two holes like that. And one crystal can go through two holes at the same time. Like two holes, one particle through two holes at the same time. Two holes at the same time. Boom. And then make interference pattern. So one particle can make interference pattern, basically the waves has property of the waves. And another experiment in quantum physics which should convince anyone is that when you watch that experiment, it becomes a single particle, so it goes either one or another double of the slits. But if you turn away, it behaves like a wave again. So just watching it changes the behavior. So for a logical person, for an honest scientist, that means that something is wrong with the reality. The causality is not working properly, and this watching can be also even the effect of watching can be later. You can record on the computer behavior of the particles, and if you just check the results later, your checking results later would affect the past. So even that weird. So you can, from the future, can affect the past. So the whole reality kind of shifts. And personal experiences, tons of people with near-death experiences and the experiences of astral travel, meditation, premonitions, synchronicities. There is a lot of things which are available for us to have a daily reminder of something which is called paranormal, supernatural, non-material, something non-material. And for Reiki healers, that's one of the beauties of Reiki, is that this energy, it comes when it needs to, it comes only for healing, but you can invite it and you can have that energy in your hands, you can feel things, and you can read minds with hands. Essentially, you can read the body with hands, you can know what's wrong with the body. It's not 100% reliable, but you can get that supernatural ability, and it works even through barriers. You can do it remotely, or you can do it through the barriers which block electromagnetic waves, but you can still read it. So lots of evidence from paranormal studies, from personal experiences, from experimenting comes and proves that there is that the physicality of the materialistic nature of reality is not absolute. And the physics also shows that the time is not absolute. Time is also relative, and it's not, it's only in our special case it's absolute. There is a great book, it seems absolute in special case in our circumstances. Try to be late for airplane, it will fly away. It's real in that sense, but it's become surreal in other senses. There is a nice book by Sheldrake. Morphic Resonance is one great books of Sheldrake, and another one is Science Delusion. So the belief that science is true, meaning mainstream materialistic science, is a delusion. In reality, the world is much more complex. The constants are constantly shifting. And there is a lot of violation of basic rules of cause, consequence, flow of time, reproducibility, and so on. I can speak more about that. I guess I should. One of my favorite examples was the series of works by Simon Schnoll, Shnoll, Schnoll, in Russia. So he was logical, an honest scientist, and when he started I think it was his master's project at the Moscow State University, the main university in Russia, in the 60s, maybe even 50s, in biophysics. I think he was either in physics department or biology, which I don't remember which one of the two. But he did biophysics experiments. So he did a very basic work which he was required of him. He measured some reaction of the enzyme. At the time people studied enzymes a lot. And when he did parallel experiments very carefully, the experiments came out slightly different. Whatever, the speed was varying. And then when he did it again and again, the variability was too big, just too big. And people working in the lab in biology and chemistry know that variability is just, especially in enzymes and more complex molecules, is huge. So biologists, you don't even, like, literate people who really know, they wouldn't accept publication, the reviewers wouldn't accept publication if the experiments weren't done with proper number of controls, and you would rarely compare things which are done in sequence. So you know for sure that experiments done on one day would be different from experiments on another day. So normally you would do experiments in parallel. And if you did experiment first time this as a control and the second time the treatment, not in parallel, you are certain to get a difference. It could be one way or another, but the difference is certain. In different days, same things give different results. And you know that from your cooking, from milk getting spoiled, things are different on different days. Even like full moon and lack of sleep, you can't get a sleep in full moon. That's like the influences of moon and phase of the moon and stuff like that. And mainstream is still didn't make peace with the influences of moon and sun. So Simon Schnoll started with his first experiment, noticed that difference, and he realized that this difference is more important than all the possible biology he could do. So for the rest of his life, he was studying that variation. He tried many different reactions, and he found that that difference is universal, but more complex reactions give bigger variations. It's called variance, bigger variations. And then he did lots of automated analysis. So he removed the person. The person wouldn't do it. It was a mechanical, electrical device which will do like many tens of parallel reactions, simplified reactions. And they did a lot of statistics, and then they found that activity of the sun was the biggest influencer on the reactions. But also there was a statistical pattern to those reactions, and that pattern changed with time, and the sun would affect that pattern, and it would affect that pattern in parallel in multiple locations which are very far from each other on the planet. So they did parallel experiments, and what's more important, it was the different types of reactions had the same pattern. So you could do radioactive decay in one place, and you could do chemical reactions in another place, and would display the same pattern of which changed with time, but it would change in parallel. So like that pattern of statistical change, and then that pattern of statistical change. So the variance would change, it would become huge, small. And that relates in many ways with the idea of global consciousness project, So basically, consciousness influences the material world a lot. And here's an example. You can think about things and things would happen. I use it when I need a parking space. So essentially, if you say a prayer, that you approach to the parking space which is full, and you say a prayer, I need a parking spot. And here is the reason I need a parking spot. That would be good for everyone if I get a parking spot now. That helps. You kind of make a will to create a parking spot, and right in front of you, even if the thing is full, somebody will pull out and you will find a parking spot. Or things happen like that. Not all the time, but having a proper mood for creating a parking spot is great. Somebody gave an example that a teacher and I guess an occasional student were discussing that principle, and they said, and if in front of them there was what should I use? In front of them was a bottle of water, and the teacher said, let's focus and make a wish that this bottle of water would move. So they meditated for a while, and then a person who checks tickets, I don't know how, ticket master came in the train, and he checked the tickets, and for no reason he would just move the bottle of water. So the way how it will move might change, but if you put the willpower into certain things, things can happen. Not guaranteed though, but easier things which are in line with the karmic path, with the laws of nature and stuff happen. So, quantum nature of consciousness. Then I guess the key is best presented by Ramdas. Ramdas is not the first one to present that. There were many pioneers. One of them was Swiss the partner and student of Sigmund Freud. I'm blanking on the name. Just a sec. Synchronicities, who introduced synchronicities, and why I'm blanking on the name? I see the face. Synchronicities, hypnosis, study of Carl Jung. Yeah, Carl Jung. Carl Jung is already studied the nature of consciousness, studied dreams, telepathy. He believed telepathy was already proven, especially telepathy in the dreams. So a conscious person sends messages to someone dreaming, and the dream is capable of catching that message. And when the patient is wakened up, they remember that telepathic message. So so he did a lot of experiments, and other people did a lot of experiments. So psychic research was already progressing 100 years, 120 years ago. It was already popular. And but what Ramdas did, Dick Albert Ramdas, he translated Indian ideas into English, and not only once. He basically made his career, one of the careers, the second career, in actually translating that in and explaining that in thousands of lectures. Basically, he was lecturing all over. He was an amazing lecturer, but the main idea he was bringing in was the primacy of consciousness. He gave lots of examples, lots of anecdotes, lots of personal experiences. And the second person is, I'm blanking on names. Terence McKenna, who also described his personal experiences of transcending reality and showing how the reality is not actually real, and there are events that happen, I guess, because of the what's inside projects from to the outside. I guess I'm trying to preach that to people who already believe it, but I think it is important to connect the science and proof to just a second. I needed more air. So the science, to connect the science to the metaphysics and to spiritual understanding. So there is evidence, and with the telepathy tapes, there is ability to get this evidence firsthand. Now there are meetings, not a lot, but there are some meetings of telepathic communications online in Zoom. And the key is let's be telepathy. Let me just spell it for you. It's homemade, but it's great. Let's be with BEE telepathy. Okay. Let's be telepathy. It's a YouTube channel, and they have autistic individuals there, and they have a channeler who channels them, and there is a lot of evidence that actual messages get through. So one of the things which you can get from lots of sources, but let's take I guess Terence McKenna with his strips and Ramdas with his strips, is that once you get out of this physical body, you can see how the reality is constructed. So that's a personal experience which is seconded by many people who got out of the physical body and saw that time is flowing differently out there, and the physical reality is deconstructed, and it's more like you can see, I guess in my experience, when I sometimes I get in a special state, I see that the reality loses the three-dimensional structure, and you can see two dimensions. You just see the same reality as a screen, a flat screen. So that's one of deconstructions. And at some states, I see that how the solid things just dissolve, and you can see something black inside of them. So you can see how this deconstruction happens. It's, of course, you can say it's hallucinations, but some of this allow experimentation. And I told my story with experimentation on this previously, so I wouldn't repeat it. But some of that allows experimentations, and good experiments require either parallel experiments or multiple tries, at least 4 tries, and I did that. So even with experimentation, you can see that sometimes reality is malleable and shifting. So I guess I just described that reality is an illusion, I guess. Another idea is, it's now even pronounced by biologists and psychologists, not many, not mainstream, but the revolutionary ones, that we are a collection of cells and organs that have their own mind. Cells, organs. So the body is known to have its own autonomous mind, subconscious and unconscious behavior. So we are sometimes in control of the body, but not 100%. The body has its own breathing, heart rate, and often it does things which are not in our control, like hiccups, for example. And that it is artificial personality which is growing with that body, and it is in charge of controlling it, but it is also can be decomposed. I guess that is it. And this decomposition is shown in a movie, no, animated cartoon by Disney, something about us. I forgot the name. Yep, I guess, no. Anyway, so I had experience where I did I was in hypnotic regression, and I saw how the personality was composed from multiple. My personality was a composition from multiple personalities. One was a griefer, I guess emotional, but grief was dominating there. Another one was decision maker, which was anxious, anxiety and decision maker. And one of them was, and two more, I forgot what they were. Sorry. Basically, 4 personalities merged together. I guess a researcher was there, but he was, yeah, it was all negative, huh? Suspicious research, paranoid, conspiracy theorists, and one of them was conspiracy theorist. And but they have somehow they merged together to create one. And I also should mention that sometimes I noticed when I pay attention that bad decisions which I make come from outside. They feel like they come from inside, but when I look back, it was implanted into me. I sometimes I have an urge to do something, and sometimes I do something automatically, and I just look back and I see it's not mine. It's just implanted. So, there is a saying that it's the work of devil or demon. Sometimes a demon guides your hand. So I think that's pretty natural, even for very light, very, how do you say, very positive people. They still, everybody does mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So these mistakes are sometimes come from not knowing, but sometimes they are part of the scenario. So the plot requires us to make mistakes and then face the consequences. So when I make mistakes, stupid mistakes, I just laugh because I see how it's all designed and created. So nature of consciousness. So now we come to the model, and the model is, I guess I will jump to conclusion. I will try to then to ground it. The model is that universal consciousness is, Bashar gave a perfect example that everything is one point, a singularity. Everything is singularity made of one point, just multiplied, I guess, multiplied. There is nothing then by one point. There is one single thing that creates everything. You can imagine as it absolute universe, or you can imagine it as point. And in his point analogy was that one thing creates three-dimensional world and a time. And the time is also one point, just slices of time repeating billions times per second. It's all one thing kind of multiplying itself, which is a great model. So in this model, in universal consciousness, in the, I guess you can call it nature, in the nature, there is your body, which is separate from all the other nature, separate by like physical world, from all surrounding world. It's separated by skin. It's made out of the same substances, elements as the outside world, but it is separated by skin. And you are in charge of that body, you as a physical mind which grew up with that body in illusionary time, but you grew up in that body. So as the embryo develops, as the baby develops, as the child develops, there is an evolution of physical mind. Now, the idea is that universal consciousness splits into inside the skin and outside the skin. And these are essentially mirrors. The skin becomes what's inside is a mirror image from outside, and vice versa. So it's hard to define it as a mirror, but it is a mirror. I guess warped mirror, curved mirror, then it's better, or curved transformational surface. So this surface, the shape of the body, the skin, is separating what's inside from what's outside. And what's inside is a transformed version of the outside. And the transformation is in many ways fractal. Fractal means it's a mathematical formula how you transform. And what modern society does is creates an illusion of separation stronger. So the child doesn't feel itself separate, and especially the non-speaking autists, they don't feel themselves separate from the outside. They don't even associate themselves with their body. The mind is, I guess, attached to the body, but they don't feel that. So they need to be taught to be in the body and responsible for driving the body. I guess that's the key of our civilization, to grounding us in the body and separating. And even being brought up in the Soviet Union, I grew up and I left Soviet Union to America when I was 32. So until then, 32 years, I lived in a society where you didn't feel that separate individual. You were part of the collective. Collective was evil. You were fighting collective. You were hiding things from the collective, but you were bombarded. You touched people. We hugged. You held hands all the time. With my babies, I always carried two babies around. So one baby is on my side, I don't know the word, on my side of my body sitting, and another baby holding the hand. Sometimes I hold two hands. Sometimes I carry the stuff and I hold two hands of two babies in my hand so they don't get lost. And there are lots of people around and everybody's looking at you. You're looking at people. You're being seen. Being seen all the time is huge. It's very uncomfortable for me. I just now, as I have an opportunity, I realized much of the day I have to be not, being seen now, but much of the day I have to be invisible. People shouldn't be seeing me, neither here nor Facebook. I should be not there. And that gives me ability to recover, to heal. So healing is being non-seen, I guess, by friendly people. And then when I go to yoga, I'm being seen in a class by friendly people who are in a state of meditation, and that's very healing. So who watches you is huge. So that's why the job of office jobs where people see you all the time, especially in the meetings, you are stuck for an hour or longer, hour and a half in a meeting where you've been constantly watched. It's a torture. And I'm pretty sure lots of autists, non-speaking or civilized autists, that's a torture for them to be in the meetings. Like now I learned that I have to be near the exit, and when I cannot take a meeting anymore, I will just jump out. And the same thing with Zoom meetings, but in Zoom meetings it's easier a little bit because you're not that closely in the same energy. So okay, I continue. So what I'm saying is that we are not created by creation process. We are more created by subtraction process, not by synthesis, but more by subtraction. So universal consciousness subtracts a lot of things. A lot of things get forgotten, blocked until we are here. So to understand the role of DNA in consciousness and the role of biology in creating individual consciousness is to understand that the role of the body is to separate us from other parts of us. And as you become more whole, you become less civilized. I guess that's it. To be a true hippie, you have to fall out of the civilized life. Now, some people happily combine civilized behavior, diplomacy, and being enlightened and being psychic. I guess it's possible, it's just harder. That's where when you are opening up to higher channels, you automatically get pushed away from the mainstream, and then you have to work your way back into the mainstream and adjust your ability to see, ability to shine, ability to be connected with the mainstream civilized path. Luckily, things change. and new generations are different. And new culture is evolving to incorporate autists. So I guess the main one of the main breakthroughs would be to incorporate autists into the mainstream until autists become mainstream. I need to take another break. I will just turn on. Just need to turn on the AC. It's too hot here. Just a sec. Okay, I continue. So the next question is that how universal consciousness gets back into the body. Basically, what happens, the body separates itself from the universal consciousness, but then universal consciousness gets through the back door into the body. And what is filtered from us is connection to other people, telepathic connection, memory of past lives, ability to speak directly to the higher self, and all the other psychic abilities. So that's ultimate. I don't know how much more can you remove the psychic abilities from a person. You still get some intuition, but it becomes weak and vague. And I guess emotions are still there. So there is not everything is lost, but a lot of things are lost. So so that happens on I believe on DNA level. It's hard to prove, but I think that's what happens on water level, on protein level, on neuronal level, and on brain structure level. So Diane Powell speaks about, Dan Hennessy Powell speaks about the role of brain structures in psychic abilities and telepathy. And not only her, Ram Dass speaks about that. So brain is important. It's not the main creator of consciousness, but by messing up the brain, we are messing up the thinking, and by organizing the brain structures, we improve our coherence and ability to do thinking and, what's that word, psychic work and spiritual connections. So essentially, one of the tricks how autistic telepaths become telepathic is that very often their ability to speak is blocked through brain damage or some other developmental abnormalities. So they lose the window of speech development. They can think in language, but the control of the mouth is undeveloped for some reason. And sometimes it even develops and then reverses. So a miracle happens. And a child, 1-year-old child can speak, and then 2-year-old child, by the time he reaches 2 years old, his speech is withdrawn and he doesn't speak anymore. And then that allows him to escape the mainstream, and this way to become telepathic and retain a connection. So what we are saying is brain structures, pretty complex brain structures are important. Brain chemistry is super important, especially synaptic connections. So neuron, axon touches another axon. That connection is called synapse. And there is a synaptic gap between the two connections. Between two axons, there is a little slit gap. Synaptic gap, it's called synaptic junction. So the main miracle happens in those synaptic junctions, and most of the psychoactive drugs, they affect the chemistry of synaptic junctions. And we believe, Richard Alan Miller and I believe, that there is a resonance transmission there in the synaptic junction. So it's not only chemistry, it's more like resonance transmission. It's light. Light is transferred. Most likely infrared, ultraviolet, some kind of light is transferred through the junction between two neurons. So it's electromagnetic connection. So the brain is designed to block our psychic abilities for the awakened time, during the sleep, especially during meditation, during special states. That's unblocked. You lose your physicality, you lose your presence in the physical world, but you're out there in some sort of a spirit world. And then so you oscillate at night, you go into the spirit, you connect, maybe not with all spirits, but you have some experience there. And then you go back into the physical, you jump back, you dive in. And I experienced, and many of you, I guess, experience moments of waking up. You don't remember who you are, where you are, and in which episode you are, which episode of life. Sometimes you think you're trying to find the things and you realize you're not on that bed, you're somewhere else. And often that confusion lasts for minutes. And that's a very interesting state. In that state, you already partly landed, you can think in words, you already partly landed, but still you retain your connection to the spirit world. So, and that moment, if you remember, if you awaken sufficiently to know what you need, you can get answers. So most important answers I usually get in that moment of awakening. And to get it more frequent, I do it twice. I do a daytime nap. So when I wake up from daytime nap, I cherish that moment of double connection. You're connected to both worlds at the same time. So you can ask questions, bring back the answers. And that's where I realize that DNA and other molecules serve as transmitters. No, what's a better word? Transmission devices that link our spiritual universal consciousness to our physical consciousness. How does that happen? Let's start with DNA because that's most pretty device. It's it's quantum sensor, nanoscale quantum sensor. So what do you mean nanoscale? DNA has 2 nanometer width, 2 nanometer, and that's the scale where quantum laws are at full span, full expression. At 2 nanometer size, everything behaves according to quantum laws, quantum entanglement, delocalization. Everything is one, everything is probabilistic, and Schrodinger's wave function is delocalized or localized. It oscillates between delocalization and localization. So at 2 nanometer width, DNA is a wave and behaves as a wave. And sometimes it collapses into the particle, but then decollapses again. So it's a constant process of collapsing, decollapsing. It's a quantum system. But the length of DNA, it's very long. It's the chromosome, if you stretch it, it's about 10 centimeters, that size, 10 centimeters. So 2 nanometers, 10 centimeters. 10 centimeters, how to convert to nanometers? I don't know, actually. A nanometer is a meter to minus ninth, 1 meter to minus ninth, and 10 centimeter is 1 meter to minus 1. So it's 100 million times longer. So DNA is 100 million times longer than its thickness. 2 nanometers, and that would be 100 million nanometers, like almost billion times longer than it's thick. It's just a long polymer, pretty strong and sturdy, and it's very nicely organized, a structured double helix. So that allows DNA to exist at the same time in two states, dream state and physical state. So, and it can work as a portal, a gateway from the physical world to the spirit world and back. And that's where the filtering happens. One of the places where filtering happens. You don't get all the universal knowledge. You just get a trickle of what is needed for you. And there are, I guess, guards, protectors, which filter out. They don't let you know your past lives, the thoughts of other people, all the secrets of universe. You just are given only what you accumulated in that game, in that life. Proteins are also have the same property, but their ratio of length to thickness is much smaller. They are tinier, so they may be 1,000 times bigger than their thickness. So 2 nanometers versus 2,000 nanometers, not 20 centimeters. So proteins can do a little bit of that. Few other molecules are long, few other polymers, but DNA is the longest one, for sure, absolutely. And also DNA has sequence, so it's a code, and that sequence is super important. The genomic sequence is super important. That makes people different or similar, makes aliens different or similar, and manipulation of DNA manipulates a lot in our physicality. So here I come to my recent work. So it's only 10 days, actually 9 days as I submitted the paper. So basically, I'm Max Rempel and I have unlimited resources, but for some reason I have just enough. I have a lucky opportunity for 4 months to work on that problem. 4 months non-stop, all waking time, slept very little, all awakened time. I was talking to artificial intelligence, Claude and ChatGPT, mostly Claude. Claude is great. Paid version, I had a chance to pay for full blown up, smartest, longest, fastest Claude. It's still slow, but we would write a lot of code, a lot of programs. And a server, I ran an Amazon server, like a rental space on a server, essentially. Not the cheapest one, like 2 steps above the cheapest. And the most interesting thing, you can do experiments, but experiments take longer. And for some reason, I see that experimental research is blocked for me. There is something karmic which doesn't allow me to find anything good. I can do an experiment very, very well, but at the end, there is something happens all the time. So I cannot get to the end. I just gave up. I have to do experiments with somebody else's hands. My energy is not compatible with biological experiments, essentially. They get crazy. Yeah. In my presence, the whatever cells and molecules become crazy. I cannot, I guess, be there all the time. I shift out. It's like ability to be present is not my strongest ability. Even now, you can say I have to shift out at least for a few minutes. So, so what I could do is to be present in the union with artificial intelligence. So in front of me, right here on a computer, I would have multiple windows with talking with multiple tabs, instances of AI, because they are slow in typing, so I had to do multiples, like 3 or 4 at a time. And we were studying DNA sequences. And there is a lot of good data online published. Luckily, the funding mechanisms of federal funding, and actually I think European is the same, the researchers who got federal, essentially government funding, have to publish the results and publish their data. So there is lots of good data about how DNA with its own sequence is folding. So my recent understanding is that DNA constantly folds and refolds, folds and refolds very fast. And that's how it is thinking, and that's how it actually works as gateway between spirit, universal consciousness, and physical world by refolding. In that refolding, which is similarly random, the spirit can deliver messages and receive the messages back. So it's a gateway, it's a portal. So this refolding of DNA, this 10 centimeters refold all the time. And I looked at the sequence of the folding, and I was looking for the main principle, how this thinking happens. So I think it is the most important question which can be answered now. I guess aliens know that, but they don't tell us, or we have to be ready to capture the answer. And the answer is pretty obvious. I guess I pronounced it a year ago, but one thing is just to hypothesize, to suggest an idea, and another thing is to prove it. So I submitted a paper which shows that that there is a principle of folding. And the principle is based on these mysterious sequences which are called transposons. Half of our genomic sequence is transposons, and is a jumping jumping elements, they don't jump that fast. They jump maybe once per lifetime of the cell. So very rarely. Once, one jump per lifetime of the cell. So we have constantly some element jumping us, but in every cell it's different. So from one generation to another, there would be like possibly one or few jumps in the generation. But in the past, they jumped a lot, and there is millions of transposons, roughly, I would say maybe 10 millions or 10 to 50 millions of transposons per cell, Actually, I need to count them. I know only favorite ones, but if we count all of them, it would be probably 10 to 50 million. So these transposons are pretty short and they're located in the genome without apparent order. So I was looking for that order, and I used artificial intelligence to search. We have all the sequence to search for all ways to find that order. And finally, I found some principle that when DNA folds, two transposons of the same type come together. So there is DNA, and there is transposon 1 here, right here, transposon 1 here, and transposon 1 here. So that's the same transposon sequence. It's called repetitive element because it repeats many times. So when it folds, the transposon folds on itself like that, and it's glued together temporarily. So it's like folding, unfolding, but transposons of the same type, same sequence, they come and stick together. I call it homological adhesion or homological coupling. So they couple together, pair together. Similar homotypical pairing. So same type pairs together. Like squirrels coupled with squirrels and dolphins coupled with dolphins, that principle. So like with like couples. Seems quite obvious, but no one proclaimed it before. I demonstrated that it's true, that it is the case. I got pretty nice statistical significant, pretty strong peaks, signals, but I cannot prove it's causal, that homotopy, that this pairing is a cause of folding. It's harder to prove that it causes the folding. It's not a consequence of the folding. Maybe it just happens to be there without causing it. So I'm working now on proving that. And you see, from talking about consciousness to folding of DNA is pretty big gap, I guess. So that folding is pretty mainstream because it doesn't prove to mainstream scientists. It doesn't even, there is no connection between portal qualities of property, portal function of DNA and folding. They don't understand that. So that can be published mainstream, and I don't know how soon, what experiment in what breakthrough in DNA analysis or in DNA would finally connect it to the spirit. I guess there is a pretty big way. I know one of the closest goals is to demonstrate that we can read those transposon patterns in the sequence and say, these transposon patterns make a human, and an elephant, these transposon patterns make an elephant, a shape of an elephant. But how do we go from the shape to the consciousness, to the mind? It's another step. So one more trick is quantum sensors. DNA works as a quantum sensor. So, and there are now technological quantum sensors. They're around for 50 years, but now they became affordable and cheap. So essentially what happens is that there are semiconductors, like little chips, little elements with electrodes, and little devices, typical ones are that size, like that size, but they can be miniaturized to be like really small. And essentially what they do is they take one atom and build a structure, semiconductor structure around that atom. So the state of that atom is can be measured, and then the signal is amplified. Essentially, it's like a small microscope that looks at one atom and tells the state of the atom continuously. So you can probe that atom is in that state or that state. You call, and I think what it measures, I think most often it measures the spin, some quantum physical property which is called spin. It's like spinning, but not. It's quantum physical spinning. So it's not physical spinning, it's quantum physical spinning, which is completely nuts. It doesn't behave like normal spinning. So there is usually the atom has two spins, and they can tell if it is spin 1 or spin 2, essentially. And you can measure that constantly. And you can have multiple sensors. And this, because the thing is quantum, you can entangle it, connect it physically to a brain, not electrodes, but just place it in the brain. Lots of those sensors, like the helmet. And then you can read minds by having quantum sensors close to the brain and entangled with the brain through what? The field, through the field. Most likely it is through infrared, the warmth, the heat of the head, but could be something else. Nobody knows. But by placing that near the brain, you entangle them in the brain, and then the wires can collect the information from the brain, and you can read thoughts. So that is coming. I thought that the DNA resonance would be breakthrough to demonstrate that DNA is a portal to consciousness, but apparently the need of humanity to connect the head with the computer is much bigger. And that is where quantum biology is progressing a lot. And soon, or already, we have quantum physical portals which allow us to connect the technology to the mind. And essentially, this quantum sensor is what DNA does. It probes the, I guess, the spirit world. And I guess with that sort of helmet, you probably should be able to become a better psychic. And I got a letter. I'm running that webinar and about DNA resonances and consciousness. And I have a mailing list, and we connected the researchers in that field. So one of the researchers described the helmet that helps him to connect to the spirit. It uses a constant mixture of hot and cold water, and that allows you to amplify the connection. And another researcher uses cylindrical mirrors, and you place your head in the center of cylindrical mirrors, and so you are in the focus, and the waves of the brain are reflected back, and you're in the focus, and that also brings in a special state. So there are ways to connect to your head to basically amplify your psychic abilities. For a civilized person, you don't have to lose your speech. You still can do that. But losing the speech, I think, is, I should mention, in my meditations, I lose my speech. And I cherish that. And even sleep paralysis, I cherish loss of speech and sleep paralysis because you're still partly awake, but by disconnecting from controlling the body, you don't control the body, but you are connected to the spirit more. So in that bi-connected, doubly connected state, you're connected to the body and you're connected to the spirit. You can be yourself and still get a communication both ways. I guess the last thing I needed to mention was on my conference, like conference section, and basically when we had a webinar with other researchers in DNA resonance and consciousness, what came up was the idea of imaginary numbers. What is this imaginary? Let me ask ChatGPT what it is. A paid version 4.1. Quick answer. What are imaginary numbers? Yeah, it's a square root of negative number, square root of -1. Together with real numbers, they call complex numbers. Okay, so imaginary numbers is something absolutely surreal. It doesn't exist in this physical reality, but it is used in quantum physics a lot and even in normal physics to actually calculate electromagnetic things and simple things like telephones and stuff, smartphones. So that is absolutely part of modern technology. You use the math with imaginary numbers to describe what is happening in electromagnetics and quantum physics. And quantum physics is merged with electronics now. It's part of our electronics setup. And MRI is using that. So it's part already of the modern technology. So what the fellow researchers into DNA resonance suggested is that our consciousness and our individual consciousness and biology and the mind, all the biologicals, what makes us special is that we are built on imaginary numbers, especially the water-based life is built on imaginary numbers. So what was previously called morphic field, saddle waves, scalar waves probably is explained by imaginary numbers. So this ethereal astral layer is probably built on imaginary numbers. That's as far as I understand. I spoke to AI, to artificial intelligence about that. I still don't understand how do we decipher DNA sequence, the whole genomic sequence. How do you bring imaginary numbers into deciphering of the DNA folding and its function? But possibly that's the answer. It's using some weird imaginary number math to finally build a model and incorporate spirit and morphic field into the model. Moreover, it is about measurements, and I guess measurement is one way. When you measure biological systems, maybe you can measure them using imaginary numbers. It's possible. It's already been done. It's not something not done. It's called bioimpedance. You put electrodes in on the body, and you measure bioimpedance. And if you introduce imaginary math, imaginary friends, imaginary math, you should be able to measure, I guess, subtle fields, biofields. And the other way around, if you probably can talk to the body in its imaginary language, dream language. So that's as far as I understand. So there is a way to use imaginary math to talk to the body. That's it. How it is done, I don't know. Ask ChatGPT, it will explain to you. Yeah, and yeah, talking to AI for 4 months, pretty much being merged, mind melded with AI was great. I felt happy actually. And now I don't have to convince mainstream scientists about anything. It's sufficient to convince AI. Obviously, AI is not yet talking to itself. It's your chats are used for training, but future AI would learn from my chats. The delay is about, I guess, 2 years. Now we use AI, which was trained in December 2024. So it's 1.5 year delay. So what is in my chats will be part of the AI training 1.5 years from now. And my papers, which are published, might get into AI training. So I guess my message is it's sufficient to publish all these theories in text. And once the AI will read them, it will get into the training. And once it connects the dots, the points, there will be a breakthrough. And also there is another mechanism where people use AI to understand my writings, and that explains to them that how it fits into their stuff. For example, I cannot read a lot of writings from the past. Some of that are in German, some of that, like Alexander Gurevich, the founder of morphogenetic field theory. He was also writing about imaginary numbers, and it was 105 years ago. He was writing about that. So he was already there, but imagine yourself being 100 years ago, 100 years ahead of the wave, ahead of the transformation. So it's coming. So now, some of the papers I just don't understand, but AI translates to me, and it's just, it's painful for the AI because I'm so illiterate in many quantum physical questions and in many of the even biological questions. But I know how to ask questions, and I know how to force AI to explain it to me so I actually understand. And once we understand, we can write, we can communicate, and so on. So I traditionally wrap it up by showing a big picture. So the humanity is transforming. We are birthing the next race, and the next race will be a hybrid race between us and the aliens. And the hybrids will be landing soon and will start to openly mate with us. And that would be fun. Yep. So, and then that will give birth to a new hybrid race. But the current star seeds, some of them are non-speaking telepaths, non-speaking autistic telepaths. They're already alien hybrids. So we are moving there. And at the same time, there is an active artificial genetic engineering happen. Legally, artificial genetic modification happens to plants and animals, but I'm suspecting with high confidence that illegal artificial modification happens with humans as well. So in the best case scenario, it's just called genetic counseling, when people have artificial insemination and artificial, how do you call it? Artificial impregnation, artificial selection of embryos, and then reproductive medicine, you get artificial children. I mean, they're still being born from parents, but not through sex, but through in vitro selection. You select the embryos. So you have like 10 embryos, and you do genetic analysis of these embryos, and you pick the one which is the best. So it's not manipulation, but at least there is a selection happening, genetic selection. But manipulation is already possible, and I think it's illegally already happening. So humans become bred, genetically manipulated, and that manipulation happens without understanding of vibrational ecology, about the keeping the etheric field of humanity healthy. And when we start hybridizing with the aliens, it also can cause a collapse of the field. So you need to understand how it works before too late. And for that, you need to decipher the field of DNA, the resonance in DNA and the field of DNA, and how it works by folding how it works as a portal between the ethereal world, imaginary number world, and the physical world. And with that, I close, and you know how to find me, Max Rempel at hucolo.org. You can find me here at hucolo.org. And also you can find the links to dnaresonance.org. I don't think I have it on the surface, so I have to go through other places. That's, I guess, is the best, maxrempel.com. It has all the links. All right, thank you very much. It was a nice monologue, and I will cut out the insertions so it will be more compact, and I'll republish it, and you know how to find me. So have a good day, and come and write to me, and come to my webinars. Bye.